Thank you, everybody, for joining. My name is John. I'm a senior customer success engineer. I've been with ShareFile for about 7.5 years now. Been through all types of roles, from support to pre-sales. Now I am a CSE. Some of you might know me, of course, in the audience there. So again, thank you for joining. I'm going to let Ashley, my associate, introduce himself.
Hey, I'm Ashley. I am also a senior customer success engineer, and I've been with ShareFile for going on 6 years now. So I also came up through technical support, through to team lead, and then now over here with the customer success team. So I'm going to pass it back to John, and we're going to get started.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. All right. So we always like to start out with, just as I was saying before, thank you so much for taking some of the time today to be with us. I feel this is really important. It really helps with these webinars that we actually do to kind of broadcast out what you may be missing within ShareFile that you could do better. ShareFile has a ton of value. That's why myself and Ashley our customer success engineers to help find that value within ShareFile. So let's get started here and talk a little bit about the agenda. Real quick, just as a reminder, we do have panelists online. They are joined by our other CSE members and other members within the organization. But please ask those questions in the Q&A section, not the chat section. But we will try to answer as many questions as possible. And at the end, we will have a Q&A where we'll try to answer most of those live and be able to do some demoing for you. So get a little bit of a visual help. But let's talk about the agenda today. Today, we're going to overview of projects. Projects is a new feature within Premium that helps containerize information that you're gathering from employees and clients alike. Now, if you're kind of keeping up pace with our webinars, we just did 2 awesome series on getting started with projects. And also, we just launched the way of templating projects, and we just had those. Cole's going to actually post those into our chat, so you can take a look at those after. Today, Ashley's going to showcase a little bit of a high level of what it looks like, just to get a little bit more familiar with what they do. And then we're going to touch on the new native e-signature experience. If you've been with us for a little bit of time, we've had e-signature for a while. We've called that right signature, and it's been a little bit disconjointed, right? You've been able to work between the two systems, but it always kind of felt a little bit between two different systems kind of bound together. Now we are moving e-signatures directly into ShareFile to make it a lot more cohesive and a lot more streamlined when we're getting those documents signed or need to be signed with your clients. And then we're going to touch on some of the new security features. You might have seen some of these come out, like our new threat alert and also our remediation option for security issues. So we're going to take a look at that today. But with that, again, check out some of those project webinars that we just did. Cole's going to post them in. Remember to post, of course, your questions in the Q&A section. But let's get started. I'm going to actually pass this over to Ashley first. He's going to get us started, and then I'll come on board for the security half. Ashley?
And we're going to go ahead and jump in. And first, we're going to talk about projects. Think of projects as a large folder that allows us to collaborate and organize data associated with a common goal. A project can include employees that will work on the project, as well as external entities such as patients, clients, vendors, clinics, and really any external entity. So we've recently covered projects in depth on some of our latest webinars, like John just said, but due to time constraints, we're going to cover projects from a very high level on this webinar. But if you would like more info, please review those webinars. So let's look at a project and see some of the structural details of the project. So if you're in your ShareFile account, go ahead and select the Projects tab over on the left, and you'll notice that you can create a project. Well, for time's sake, I've already created a project, and this is going to be kind of centered around an early intervention clinic, and the patient's name is Jane Starks. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate into this project. So what we're going to see is we're going to see some tabs at the top: home, tasks, document request, information request, files, and some additional settings up here. But what we're going to look at first is home, okay? Think of this as the main dashboard for the project. It allows you to see relevant information on the project, such as document requests, files, and comments at a glance. Next, we're going to look at tasks. This is an area where you can create tasks for those assigned to the project. Each task can have a due date as well as a status selection. So you can see I titled a couple tasks, I put them in a status, and I assign them to specific people, and I have a due date on those. So we can clearly see when that task is supposed to be due. And each individual user that's in here can update the status whenever they have finished the task or start on the task. Next, we're going to look at document requests. So we have some support documentation that we need to gather from our patient and other clinics. So I'm just going to go ahead and navigate into here so you can see what that looks like. This is an area where we can request documents from an entity, whether it's internal or external. Any documents that need to be gathered can be created and sent to specific users in this area. So as you can see, I have 3 documents that I need to gather or request from Jane Starks, the patient, and we can see her associated with those documents. I also have a physician referral that I sent to a Hope Clinic, which is a different clinic that I need to gather for this project. And it's really cool because we can approve or deny items uploaded to this section based on the data that they upload. So if I look at this license or valid ID, we see that Jane has uploaded an item to this area where I can approve, or if I don't, if I look at it and it's not right, I can actually remove it and deny that. So it's not just a place where, data is going to funnel in without being checked. Okay. So the other cool part about this area is we can actually have comments directly in ShareFile about these items. So for example, I had one instance where Jane had reached out to me. She said, I only have a library card. Does that work? And my response was, let me review what you sent and I'll let you know. So there's these comments or conversations directly in this area between the requester and the assigned entity directly through the project. And this removes the need for that external communication outside of the app where, possibly PHI or internal data could be leaked. All right. So from here, we can show some info about what the actual client sees. Okay, so I'm going to bring up Jane's email here, and you can actually see that she was invited to a project. We see where she was assigned to the document request. That's the request that she needs to upload those documents. And you can also see she gets notified when she has tasks or items that need to be sent. Okay, so she can actually look at these emails and decide, oh, I need to get this done because there's a task due. And from her perspective, if she looks at the project, so once she logs in, she only sees the requests for her. Okay, so you only see 3 items here because those are the only things that she's associated with on the project. So that last item that was sent to the clinic, she doesn't see it. So you can collaborate with multiple entities in here, and the entity only sees what they are supposed to see. So I'm going to pull that back over, and we're going to continue on a little bit, and we're going to jump in and hop back out of here, and we're going to actually go to information requests. Okay, so this area allows us to create custom forms to gather data from those internal or external entities. We can build out forms from a form builder that allows us to gather additional ad hoc information that we may not be able to gather from a document request. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and show this form. This was a form that I created in ShareFile without any other tools of just, all right, I need to get some information from the patient, and here are some of the questions that I want to ask. It's as easy as, let me go back out and I'll show you what that looks like. Building that form looks like. It's literally drag and drop. So let me pull back out of here. I'm going to create an information request. I'm going to click create a blank request, and I'm just going to say test for this situation. Again, we can have a due date on this, but what it does is it redirects me to a builder where I can then take whatever questions I want and build out this form. And I can, put whatever information in here I want to send to the entity and have them fill it out. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'm leaving this page because I do not need this. And I'll actually show you what it looks like when Jane uploads the information. So we see that the milestone form is completed. So I'll go back into it and I can see, oh, she responded. All right, well, now we see that it was submitted today. We see that Jane is the name. Her milestone that's delayed is speech, and she's 2 years old. So you could obviously send this to the parent and they could fill it out, but you get the idea of we can have these ad hoc type questionnaires that can gather more information than just what we get from a document. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and I'm going to show you our next tab.
And Ashley,
go ahead.
And Ashley, apologize to intervene real quick, but I think that's a great way to be able to retrieve that additional information. What if though I create a bunch of different forms and say I want to use this on another project? Is there a way I can actually take that form and plug it into a new project that I create?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. All of the items at the top, so document request, information request, and our data tables, which I'll show you in a minute, can all be created as a template. And we can reuse these templates or these forms or document requests on other projects. We can even go to the step of creating a project template. So maybe we have everything that we want in our document request, our information request, and our data table, and we just want to wrap it all up and send it to another patient, completely separate patient, and everything stay the same. Well, we can do that with project templates. So we have a lot of templates here that we can utilize for other projects, and basically everything stays the same except for the data that was assigned to the user obviously doesn't come. So the files stay within the project that they're associated with. So whenever you assign the new user to the new project, they get to upload their data, right? And obviously the comments stay with this project, and new comments would be created on that new project as well. So great question. All right, now we're going to go over to the Files tab. Okay, the Files tab is where we can upload our internal data. Okay, so this is an area you can add documents that you may already have for this project. It can be internal files that you may need associated with the project that don't need to be requested from an internal or external entity. Also, when an entity uploads documents to a document request, those items will be added in this section as a kind of running list. We can see who uploaded what, where, and when. You can also share files from here. So like if I needed to share one of these items out with someone, I can share that file just like we do regularly in folders. We can select who we want to send it to, select a permission set, and then we can share it. Okay. So again, this is not just about taking in information. We can also send information out from a project. Next, we're going to look at the data table. Okay. In order to create a data table, you click the little plus here, and then you can select a blank tab and build it out. Or like I said, you can use a template. So what I did was I built out a data table here. I named this little tab milestone progression. And as you can see here, I can build this table out as big as I want with as much information as I want. And in this case, I added some milestones, what stage they're in, which specialist is assigned to those milestone teaching lessons and working with them. Also, what day the therapy started, and some additional notes on this specific milestone. So there's a lot of ways you can utilize this specific area to add in different data points to the project. For example, maybe you're a construction company and you need to add, what the price of lumber is. You could add, 2x4 and how much it costs and, is it delivered yet? You have a lot of flexibility to add whatever you want in this area. And that's super cool. So the last column or the last tab that I want to talk about is the comments tab. Okay, this is just a running list of comments that are attached to an item. Okay, so in this case, you saw earlier on the document request where I was working with Jane on some of the items that she uploaded, and it actually gives you the link to go back to that item if you so choose. But there's going to be a lot of comments on these projects, and a lot of times we just want to see them in a list, okay, based on whatever you want to sort by, who added it, maybe where they added it, and you have that ability from there. All right. So again, if any of this interests you, please go back and watch our Create a Project and Project Template webinars. I really think that this is going to be great for a lot of our customers. Again, we're adding features to this all the time. So just be ready to start, thinking of ways that you can utilize this in your company and, start building out projects. And again, if you have any questions about this, you can reach out to your admin. And if your admin knows who your CSE is, please work with them to actually get something like this set up. All right, now we're going to talk about native e-signature. So I'm going to come over to our signatures tab, and this is where the home for native e-signature is going to be, is in this kind of area into the signature requests. Okay, so I want to go over a few ways to start an e-sig request, as well as talk about some of the latest updates. We can create a signature request from the dashboard. Let me show you that. From the dashboard, you can send for signature. We have the ability to do it from a template. So if we create our own template, a document template, create document template, you can actually do it from here and it's this one. You can send this for signature. We also have the ability to come into the actual signature request area and send for signature. But one of the main ways that I think a lot of our customers will use this is from the document itself. So if I go into one of my folders here and I want to send a document for signature, I just select the document I want, and then I click send for signature. It keeps it in ShareFile. We don't have to go to write signature anymore. Everything is built in this specific area. So each has its own benefits, but figuring out which works best for you should be based on your own workflow, really. All right, let's create a signature request and show some of the new additions to native e-signature. So some of those new features are going to be saving to a folder and maybe some default functions. So I'm going to go ahead and create this document request real quick. And actually, I'm going to do this for Jane. Jane Starks, and it automatically brings her in as a signer. We can set the signer order if we have multiple signers, so that, maybe you want the first signer to sign for sure first and then down the list. But I'm going to go ahead and go to next step. I think most of you guys are familiar with write signature, I hope. So this should seem very familiar. Obviously, we can drag and drop our info here. So let's do a date. And it's really this easy. So as you're building out your signature, you have some more options on the right-hand side. Since this isn't a write signature demo, I'm just going to go to the next step and show you some of those new features. So one of the new features that we have is the ability to save a signed document into a folder. So maybe you have invoices that you're sending for signature, and you have an accounting team or a department that has an invoices folder. We want to stick those signed invoices into that folder, and we can do that directly from here. We can name it. We can put it in the folder wherever we choose after it's signed. And we have some additional settings down here, like automatic reminders. Maybe we want daily reminders. Maybe we want weekly reminders. We have drawn signatures, typed signatures, and even blue ink signatures. And we get to pick which ones we want the end user to be able to utilize. And then we also have the ability to allow the signers to download the original document before signing. You may not want that, so you can uncheck that if you so choose.
Hey, Ashley, I think, since we're talking about security today, what are some other things that we could do to secure this document when it's getting sent out to be signed? What are some advantages that we can use here?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are additional security options that can be set. We can set a passcode here, and that basically that would require the signer to input that passcode before being allowed to sign in. And we can also utilize KBA, which utilizes a third-party quiz to identify and verify who the signer is before allowing them to sign. That's a great question, John, and I'm glad you brought that up. But once I have that filled out, I can just click send for signature, and then the end user, just like Right Signature, gets an email. They can access that email and send or sign that document. Okay. So the last thing that I want to talk about is kind of templates associated with our new native e-signature. So first, we're going to look at Right Signature templates, because if you know anything about Right Signature, there's a lot of templates in there. If you're really utilizing them, you want to be able to use those in our native e-signature tool. Okay. So I just got confirmation that if you want to use RS templates, that functionality will be releasing in a few days. In order to access those old RS templates, though, you will select the Create Signature Request. So I'm going to show you that. Go to Signatures, Create Signature Request up here. Then you're going to click Send for Signature. And then when you go to Browse Files, select Use a Template. And this is where your RS templates are going to be located. Okay, so this is where you would come in and access those templates. But if you haven't utilized templates or RS templates before, that's okay, because we have a new template section that you can create new document templates in and utilize those for sending for signature. But I will say, if you need to update your RS templates, you still have to go into Right Signature to update those old Right Signature templates. All right, I'm going to show you where the new native e-signature templates will be located, and that's up in the template section. We kind of talked about this earlier, but whenever you go to create a new document template, that's going to be for the native e-signature portion of ShareFile. Okay, so you're going to want to select that, and you will see any of your document templates in here ready to go. If I click on it, it's going to ask me, do I want to send this? And it's got everything built out, so I'm ready to send this for signature. All right. I hope you learned a little bit about projects and about our new native e-signature features. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to John to talk about some new security features. Take it away, John.
All right, Ashley, that was awesome. I really do feel some of those premium options there are going to help a lot of people in terms of different workflows and processes. So take a look at those. Again, I saw a couple things in chat where they were wanting to know a little bit more about, of course, projects. So again, Cole did post some of our two past webinars that we did of getting started with projects, and also one around templates. So definitely take a look at those when you have a chance. All right, Ashley, you do see my screen, correct?
I do.
Awesome. Beautiful. So let's jump into a couple different security measures that we've recently brought out. We're going to touch on a couple other ones as well that kind of frequently come up, at least on my side and Ashley's side, in terms of questions. So we're going to touch on those as well. But let's jump right into it. So first off, we're going to talk about the secure share recommender. You might have already seen this. But this is something new that we developed where we can see within a document if there was any kind of PII, some personal information that you might be sharing within that document. Certainly, like if you're in healthcare or legal or even accounting, really any vertical can contain documents with personal information. So ShareFile's made a way for us to help recommend certain share options when you are sharing those documents that have personal information in them. So let me demonstrate that real quick. So I'm going to take a quick document. And as you can see in this document, I just wanted to preview real quick. I do have some fictitious information, but it does have, of course, information like a fake social security number, a phone number, an address, and so forth. So with that being said, if I have this kind of document, it's actual document, and I went to share, you'll see now a new alert will come up and indicate that we detected some kind of personal information within the document itself. It will allow you to have two different options here. First off, it's going to say, hey, do you want us to recommend? And it will show you what it's going to set that options to for the share itself. So I can click on that directly and it will automatically change my share options. Or if I click on edit options, I can come in here and say, hey, you're right. Maybe this needs to be a little bit more secure. And then I can go and set those settings myself. But let's take for an example, if I did apply the recommended settings, as you saw, it did apply it. By the way, it went a little quick, but there is a little eye icon next to the recommendation settings, and it will tell you what those settings will be set to for the share itself.
Hey, John. What if a customer doesn't want their documents scanned?
That's a really good question, Ashley. I think, a lot of different industries may say, hey, I don't want that occurring because we do detect those things within the document. So it could be something that obviously security and compliance wise, you just don't want us to do. The great thing of that is we already thought of that. So you as an administrator, you would need to be an administrator to see this setting. Is we can come down to our advanced section down here and come down to file settings. And then within here, you'll see the share recommender down here. And again, it will give you a little learn more. So it will give you a little bit more information in what we do with that and how we determine the actual PII and if there's personal information that we recommend to be more secure. So you're going to learn a little bit more about that if you just don't feel that you got a grasp of what it does. But from here, I could simply turn that off and save. And that will no longer actually give you recommendations or scan that file in terms of looking for that personal information. So
I see some additional settings here for limiting share options. Is there a way to make them default? And can you provide some detail on those?
Yeah, there's a perfect segue, honestly, Ashley. It's perfect section where we're actually landing right now. As you saw when I was sharing a document, I did have the ability to make adjustments to that share, like who I can send it to, who's going to access it, how long the link is going to survive. Those things I can customize, but say me as an administrator, I may say, hey, listen, I don't want anyone sending anonymous links out, meaning anonymous people can access that link if I chose that. And you see, we do have that option up here at the top. So when you are sending that out, you do have the ability to set it as anonymous. Or if we're just asking for information, we could also turn that off, but that is considered anonymous as well. The two most secure options down here are the requiring them to sign in. So I would need the client or me as the employee, or if I'm sending it to another employee, to sign in first before I could see that share. So these are really important. This isn't anything new, but certainly, like Ashley said, since I'm in this section, it's a really good point to bring up because, of course, with the secure share recommender, we do want to be sure that when you are sharing your documents, you are making the right corrections or changes to the share based on who you're sending it to. But with these options, I can, again, further strengthen my security by eliminating the ability for other users to be able to send, say, things anonymously, or also set a recommended or a maximum way of how I can set my expiration for the link itself. So say, for instance, I don't want a request link to live out there past 14 days. when a user tries to create a request link, they're not going to see options past the 14-day mark. They're going to be limited to 1 day, 7 days, and then 14 days. So again, great way of just helping, just strengthening your security when you're sharing and collaborating these documents out with people. All right, so let's move on to the next subject, and that is security alert settings. You might have seen this already as well. This is somewhat new though, is that we've introduced a lot of ways that we notify you as a client or an employee or an administrator of suspicious activity within the instance itself. Say for instance, as you could see, we have a couple of different examples here, things like users that are entering in from different countries that they're not used to entering. Say somebody might have went on PTO and went over to, say, Ireland, and they logged in from there. You might get a notification to indicate that, say, Bob is now logging in from Dublin. So these are some of the alerts just to keep you aware of some of this activity so you could help investigate what is actually happening with that user or within the instance itself. So these are really important when it comes to just safety of your instance. Being aware is very key. So I do feel that, this is something that is very important when we're maintaining your instance, especially when you're holding documents within ShareFile itself. Now, I did want to also add here, this as actually another addition to the threat alerts, is we do have the ability to add alternate context for people to be alerted. There has been a lot of feedback from everyone, possibly people here, that want to actually send these alerts to somebody else within ShareFile. Maybe they aren't an admin and say, I don't want any of my alerts going to employees or clients. I don't want them bothering them, but I want to keep all my admins alerted. But I also want my administrators or people that are within a distribution group or somebody maybe without the administrative access, we can add other people to get those, of course, notifications so they can be aware as well. So this is really important. Just be sure that you visit this. Again, one note here is that only the account owner is able to see security alerts. That is actually very important. Things of this nature, typically account owners only able to see that. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to expand that out so other administrators can see it. So if you don't see that right now, that's fine. It could be that you're just not the account owner on the page, but recommend the account owner, whomever that is in your organization, to take a look at this because this is widely popular right now. Another thing before I jump in to show some of also the remediation points, where if we do get some alerts where we think there's suspicious activity is going on, we could take a look at that user and of course make some actions to it. But first off, I do want to notate here is we also have a quarantine file section. Every file that's going into your ShareFile instance is scanned for any kind of malicious, say, viruses, or anything that could cause any disruption within, of course, your file system. They are scanned within here. And if there was something maliciously thought of, it could actually bring them into your quarantine files and taken out of the location where they're at. So just be cautious of this. I would definitely double check this when you can as an account owner. Just as a reminder, you do get emails if there was something suspicious on a file and scanned. So you will be alerted if there was something that was scanned and thought of being malicious. So come in here, you'll see the files listed. You could say, oh, I know that one. No, it's definitely not a virus. We could always restore. We could simply delete. And also we could download it and have it further investigated, say with another scanning tool or some other processes that you take to double check if it is actually malicious or not. All right, so let's take a look at some of the remediation that we can actually do. As you saw, some of those threat alerts can detect if somebody, of course, is, say, brute forcing into a user account, or they got detected into a different country that they're not used to logging into. What do I do as an administrator if I see something like that? Now, the notifications you get should take you directly to the suspicious users management or portal or profile, I should say. But if anything, we can simply go into any of these. Say, for instance, Greg here, we had some suspicious activity. You'll see the activity and security alert section here. And when we come in here, we will see a list of different actions that may be suspicious. Now, of course, Greg looks pretty clean here. everything is hunky-dory. We don't have to worry about too much. But if we started to see these things build up and we see a lot of different odd activity, a couple things we could do first off is we can view folder activity. And what that will do is we'll be able to check if anything within a 24-hour period or say past 30 days, we could see if Greg was doing anything like downloading and uploading to certain folders. But also I can take action here. So if there was something actually going on, like, yeah, you know, I don't think Greg's in Dublin right now. He's not on PTO and he said he didn't log in from a place in Dublin. Could be other reasons, but maybe be safe than sorry, right? We want to disable the access right now. That's not deleting anything. We're just disabling the account so he can't log in so we can look further into our logs and our reporting to be sure everything does look correct. But other things like we can log the user out of all the devices they're on. We could reset their password or their two-step like their MFA. And we could also remove from your folders. And when it says remove from your folders, that means you as the administrator that has access, it'll remove them from any folders that you're attached to. So again, this is a great way to really strengthen, again, your security posture, to have oversight, be able to track these things and take immediate action through notifications. So keep aware of those notifications. Those are really important when they do come around. And this is an easy way for you to come in and take a look and audit that user. All right, so let's jump into another topic here. This typically comes up quite a lot when we're talking about administrators and who has access to what data. And that is the super user group. Within the super user group, and again, this is another permission. If you do not have that on your administrative user within ShareFile, you may not see this. But your super user group is not a particular permission on your user, but just like it said, it's an actual group of users that you add to it. More particularly, as you can see, I have all these individuals added in my super user group. And what the super user group can do is they can see all files and folders within your instance. So the super user group gets added to any folder that you have in there, even your personal folders. So of course, remember, if you know this, employees have a personal folder section that they can actually see up here, which really is pertaining just to them, where they typically safe harbor files that maybe they don't necessarily need to share out. But within the super user group, they'll be able to access those files as well. So just be very cautious when you're adding somebody here. This also doesn't mean that they're automatically gaining administrative permissions. That is all handled through the people section and under the browse employees, where you can actually set those permissions. Now, again, I would just keep this list slim. You don't want everyone having the ability to see every file and folder within your organization. And one last thing down here is you can actually hide the super user group from the folder access list. So perhaps if an employee may think there's something sketchy about who has access to a folder, you will see that they're all added with the super users group here. If they start to question that, you can always hide that so that, again, that doesn't show up when they're looking at who has access. Again, more of a compliance thing than anything, but I did want to actually notate that because that does tend to come up from time to time. All right, so let's also now gear towards a little bit more about MFA or two-factor. This has come up quite a lot recently, especially on the client side. By default, when you're in the login and security policy section, as you can see, you have your two-step verification here. By default, you do have employees requiring 2FA. Now, as a little bit of a reminder, if you are using single sign-on through your organization, the MFA part doesn't matter for the employee side. But say, for instance, you want your clients to also enable MFA when they are accessing your ShareFile instance. That is off by default. So if I do enable this, and say, for instance, I already had clients that already onboarded into my ShareFile instance, when I save this, the next time the client does log in, they will be prompted to set up their multi-factor authentication. This is really, again, more of a better security stance. It also depends on who you're working with within the organization as a client. So that's kind of determined it by you and the administrators. And again, the compliance and auditing reasons through your organization. But again, this is another safe way to validate these clients are who they say they are when they are accessing data that you're sharing with them. So again, another good key point to be sure that you want to investigate this and enable this. Again, don't worry about people that already been onboarded. They will be prompted next time they authenticate to set up their MFA. Do note, as just a little tip, is that you will have to require to set up voice or through a text, through a phone first, but you do have the ability to set up an authenticator app after the fact they do set that up. So if your clients do say, hey, I like to go through my authenticator app, no problem. After they do the initial MFA setup, then they can go under their personal settings, my personal settings, and then under their personal security and under two-step factor, there'll be a section there to talk about setting up their authenticator app. All right, so back over to our admin settings. Another popular one that we want to highlight here, is going up to permissions, is my client shares. This is very, I would say, a hard to understand concept, because you would think, hey, clients, I'm giving access to clients. Clients should be able to share out. By default, if I'm sharing out to a client, I'm giving them access. They wouldn't be able to reshare that file out. Now, in most conditions, that is okay with a lot of organizations. And by default, they can't actually share files out. But if I did toggle yes, that will allow clients to be able to share files back out to other people. Now, you might think, hey, that's a security concern. And that's why I want to bring this up, because that is something you want to look at. Perhaps a previous administrator had this enabled, and you started to see clients, and of course, sharing things out, and you're kind of mystified about that. I want you to take a look at that option there and be sure if you do want that enabled, that is fine. But if not, be sure to select no. And again, that is by default. But we do have a little handy tool tip there if you did want to learn more about what they can actually do. All right, so let's go to one of the last couple of things I wanted to touch on, and then we're going to get to Q&A. We want to go over to file settings here. Oh, I'm sorry, security, login security. And let's talk about authentication. Authentication obviously is very key when we're talking about obviously authenticating users within your ShareFile and giving them access. So we have a couple things down here under the authentication options under the login and security policy. And the first one at the top is log inactive users out after, and it gives a period of time. Now, this is directly to do with your web access. So if users are primarily accessing your ShareFile instance through the web, this is the inactive timer that you'll want to actually set. So for instance, if I'm in my session right now and I go to lunch and I forgot to log off, I could set it so that after 30 minutes of inactivity when I'm in the browser, it will log that session off automatically. Again, super important if you're sharing desktops with people, if there's within your organization, you're using thin clients, and say, for instance, there's people kind of coming in and going, and they might sit down and you accidentally don't log off your session. This is super important to remember to set this based on your compliances within your organization. And then down here, we have our re-authenticate after. This has to do with all of our different applications. We have a Outlook tool with a plugin. We do have a desktop tool. We have mobile device access. This actually controls when they are required to re-authenticate through those applications. By default, I believe it is on never. So that really enhances the user experience, so they don't have to re-authenticate anytime. But if you do want to require them to re-authenticate to our applications, you could set that parameter here. Usually by default, never is fine to help that user experience, but typically I also see people actually setting it to 30 or 60 days, again, to help with compliances when it's talking about application access, right? All right, and let's talk about the last thing. We really touched a lot on how we're getting alerted now of suspicious activity. Now, let's kind of step forward a little bit now and say we're looking to audit a user with the activity that they're doing. We do have built-in reporting. So under the company account info, you're going to go under the reporting section here. And under the reporting section, you'll see a table of all the different reports you have ran and other administrators have ran within the system itself. You have two tabs. One is the first tab you'll see here. These are pretty much your basic one-off reports that you run. The second tab are recurring reports. So I can actually set a report to run, say, every Monday of every week, because maybe it's important for me to gather this information and to be able to analyze it to understand, say, within that week, what has happened within the account or certain users or certain folders. So this is a good way to kind of keep tabs on things. And the great thing about recurring reports is that it will be saved into a folder of your desire. So when you create those recurring reports, and you'll see here, I have one already created. As you can see, I have this usage report running weekly, every day on, or every week on Monday, and I have it saving in my customer one folder. And you'll see a couple of my reports here, like my usage report down here, will be saved within the folder. This is a great way, as if you have a lot of other administrators, or you have people within, say, your security team that are looking to just be able to take a peek at what's going on within the ShareFile instance. It's a great way to run those recurring reports and not have to worry about running each individual instance of those reports every time you need it. But we have a great amount of different reports that you could do. As you could see, all of them are pretty well detailed. Most of all, I would say the most common thing that we use is the usage report, because as you could see, I could filter down different activity that I'm looking for. I can specify a range. And just a note here, you do have up to a 90-day range that you can set, though data that you can search goes all the way back to the inception of your instance. So I can do 90-day increments for what I'm looking for, but I can go all the way back to the inception of the instance that I have here. Now I can actually base it on the entire account, per user, or per folder if I wanted to grind this down a little bit more in terms of what I'm trying to find. I can also include subfolders within the folder itself. As you can see here, I can set my reoccurring if I want this to reoccur on a normal basis. Or if I didn't, I just wanted a one-time run, I could do that. And then I could generate it either in Excel or a CSV form. And when I do run that, you'll see the process running in the back, and I'll get a little green check to say it's been successful. If it didn't contain any data, it will notate that with a little, of course, yield sign here and tell you that there was no data that was found. But the great thing is I don't even have to leave the ShareFile experience for me to look at these reports, because I could view them directly through here, because we do have Office integration for things like Excel, Word, PowerPoints, and so forth. But here it gives me a lot of great information. I could see my account did some uploading. I could see what it uploaded to. It was to my file box. I could actually see myself logging in and doing two-factor. So you have a lot of information that you can gather here. And you can always download that and interpret it into another, say, reporting application to input that information and analyze it further.
Hey, John, do we have any documentation on different types of reports that we can run in ShareFile?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Ashley. Let me move this over because I already have that set. I knew you were going to ask that. But, this is a great report here. I'm sorry, a document, I should say. We'll list this. We'll bring this into the resources that we send out after the webinar. But this is a great landing page because it tells you all the different reports that we have. And say, for instance, I want to know what gets reported or what columns are in my usage report. So if I click on that usage report, just like I showed you, it'll show me all the different data that it's going to collect and output for you when you do run it. So this is a great landing page when, again, you're trying to figure out what kind of report to actually run. You don't want to just test every one of them. You can come to this document and look in each one of them and see what it's actually going to display in terms of the reporting it gives us. All right, and I think that is coming up the time. I think that was perfect. We got about 10 minutes to be able to do some live Q&A. So I'm going to hand it back over to Cole so he can help muster up some of the good ones that we got live and didn't get answered.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. Thank you, Ashley. We have a lot of questions, as you can see, a lot of fantastic questions. And just a reminder to folks, we had a few people raise their hand during the session. Just make sure we don't do the raising hand. We actually will just ask that you ask the question in the QA panel, just so we can actually get to that and so we can answer it for everybody to see. But we do have a lot of good questions here. One of which was, how can we send a template for signature and make sure that it comes back to the folder that we want it to come back to.
So
Yeah.
Ashley, I'll let you take that one.
I'll
because
take
you
that
already
one.
got
Perfect.
If you would, yeah, go into the signature request, or however you want to create a signature. We're going to go ahead and show you that. So yep, we'll send for signature. We'll select a file. Okay, so we get to select. We can use a template if so. Yep, we'll go ahead and select that, and maybe that sample contract document right there. Let's select that. All right, so now if we go to the fill in, yep, the recipient, and we go to the next step, we're going to see those fields already placed, which is perfect because that's what a template's for. And now we're going to go to the next step again. And right here is where you're going to specify where you would like that document, once it's signed, to be stored. Okay, you get to select, where you want it to go. Again, kind of like I said earlier, if you have, an accounting department and they have their own folders, maybe you want to put the expense in the expense folder. You have that ability to do that. And then once you send it for signature, they will fill it out, and it won't go into that folder until it's fully signed and everything's been completed on it. Once it is signed and completed, then it gets put into that folder where whoever's a part of that folder, if they have upload alerts, they would get a notification that it was added.
Yeah, and I think another good point is, as you can see, I already had one ahead of time here. This was just a new hire, but this was signed, and this was a template that I created. And as you can see down here, this is the completed document with all of the factual information in terms of the audit trail and kind of where it went. So this is just great information to showcase that this was properly done. We got John Doe's signature, and this is the completed form that got put into the folder. Perfect.
Perfect. Thanks, John. We've got another question here from our friend Dwayne. I'll give this one to you, John. Can the form questions be conditional? For example, if the answer is yes, then another option pops up.
Yeah, let's run through it just real quick here.
Sure.
We did go through some of that with some of the other project webinars. Definitely take a look at that to go a little bit more in depth, but let's take on John Doe's tax form here. And we're going to go into information request. And you know what? Let me go into one that I already had in here. So we could go into settings, or actually, let me come back here and take a look at these. So as you can see here, if I highlight this question, I can do things like required or unrequired, so they would have to fill those forms in. I can give some hint and text information here, though. I feel as we kind of deeply dive more into this, because I feel this is going to be pretty popular in terms of building these forms, we will have more conditions added to this. So for instance, like you made an example there, Cole, like if this wasn't actually checked or we didn't get an answer, perhaps then this asks a different question after they pass this or don't fill it in, things of that nature. But currently right now, as you can see, I can come into each one of those, require those settings if I wanted to, make some adjustments, like I want it to be horizontal or vertical, so we can kind of change the placement and how it looks. But conditional wise, we're still working on that in terms of being able to help provide variables, if you will, when you're filling out those forms. But I think that's a really good question, because I do feel that's something we want to continue to kind of dive into.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. And this is a pretty quick question, I believe. It's from our good friend Scott. The question is there a way I can resend documents and forms that haven't been completed, just to make sure they actually do get completed? So I'll pass this to you, Ashley.
Yeah, so go ahead and select the signature requests, and if they haven't been if they've been sent but they need to be resent, select on one of those new hire confirmations, or sample contracts. So select that. You have the ability to remind them, and that's what I would recommend doing. So just kind of nudging them in the direction. You're not going to resend it, but they would get that notification that they need to sign it. So since everything's already been built out, it's just a reminder, but you do have the ability to revise. And if you did revise, you could resend, right? So revising would allow you to change some fields, maybe change the recipient, and then you have the ability to then send it back off again. But that would basically void the first document that you sent. But yeah, reminding would be the best way to go about that.
Yeah, totally agree. I think, the big point of being in here natively too, Ashley, is that I don't have to go through the split options of going into another browser to see what's going on here. Now I can just see everything that's actually sent out from here, and be able to see easily through progress of what's actually happening, what's overdue. The great thing also is you do have the status options here that you can control to showcase, hey, it's in progress. I'm sorry, let me go back, and in progress, I only want to see those in progress ones. And you saw I sent that new hire one, and this is still waiting for John Doe. So it gives you the ability to really help filter out what's happening within there. If you're trying to figure out, hey, somebody didn't sign something, obviously it's in progress. So then I can easily filter out those ones that I need to remind people of.
Yeah, one more thing. There is an admin view. So if you remember, if you've ever used Right Signature, you have the admin view in old Right Signature. It just gives everyone who has access to that admin view, that permission in ShareFile, they would then be able to see the sent for signature request from other employees on the account. So this is one that I sent by me. And obviously John can see it because he has that admin view permission. So just wanted to notate that.
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest requests I've talked to with clients, is the ability to be able to do that as well, because that is super important. Could be that there's a manager that needs to be sure that things are getting sent out, or perhaps a client came to the manager and said, listen, I never got anything. And that person perhaps isn't on PTO. The manager could then come in and say, well, I have admin view and I could see that Ashley did send this to you. Let me send a reminder so that you get that notification again. So in case you misplaced the original notification through email. So definitely think that's great. That's a great point.
Awesome. Fantastic. And I know we're coming up right at the top of the hour. I think I have maybe one more question. I have one that I know I can answer. Someone asked if there is a webinar dedicated to workflows, that workflows tab there on the left side of ShareFile. We do not have that at the moment, but it's certainly something I will take back as feedback and see if that's something that might be useful for the future. And with that being said, we are at the top of the hour. We know there are a lot of open questions. We see plenty of them on our side of things. We will stay on a little bit after the hour to make sure that we can answer as many as we can. So we will be on the webinar still. We won't be presenting anything at the time, but we'll just be on answering those questions in the QA to make sure you get the answers you need. And once again, everyone, the recording will be sent to your email within the next few days. So please be on the lookout for that. And we'll include linkage that we mentioned in today's webinar in that email, to make sure you get to see the resources that we mentioned today. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and wrap it up. And thank you, everyone, for taking a little slice of your time and sharing it with us today. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.